I'm Mackynlie Conklin, Miss Fasken Park USA, and this is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Good evening, everyone. It's Adrian from the Pageant Project with you, and my special guest for today is Mackynlie Conklin, who is Miss Fasken Park USA. Welcome to the show, Mackynlie. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. What's the weather like in Texas? I'm assuming you're in Texas at the moment.
Actually, I'm in Oregon. I'm visiting my boyfriend right now, so the weather here is very warm. It's very, very much like Texas.
I was going to say, because I was in Texas just last summer, and every day was over 100 degrees. And even coming from Australia, where I like the heat, the Texan heat, I was in Dallas, Fort Worth, and then we went down further south. It was hot, and it was
Yeah.
humid. Was last summer unusually hot, or was that just par for the course? That's normally how it is.
It varies every summer, but I definitely think last year was kind of rough.
Okay, it's not just me then. Well, Mackynlie, I was looking through your bio. I think you win for the most number of Instagram handles on on your personal page. Why don't we start with the really difficult question? Why don't you tell people a little bit about what you do? Because I feel you're one of those people. If I ask that question, there's so many different angles you could attack it from. But why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, so obviously I'm Mackynlie. I started pageantry when I was about 15. I started a local fair, and it just kind of caught my interest. It was something that I really wanted to get into, and it was started being a passion of mine whenever I competed at Miss Texas USA for the first time in 2019 after winning Miss Permian Basin USA that year. Um, Personally, I'm a social media manager. I work for a small boutique agency out of the Houston area. Love what I do. I love getting to work with small businesses and building up their social media presence. I also am a small business owner myself. I own Model Haus in Midland, Odessa, and we help girls learn the ins and outs of the modeling industry, as well as coaching them in their first steps to their pageant journey.
I saw Model House and I looked into it a little bit, and I don't know much about the different regions. I don't know if that's the right word, but in Texas, and it seemed to say that in West Texas, getting into the modeling industry is harder than, I don't know, maybe let's say Dallas or somewhere that's a bit more central. So, is there a particular issue in West Texas that it's harder to get into the modeling industry?
It is. Unfortunately, in West Texas, Midland, Odessa area, the bigger cities are going to be 5 to 8 hours away. And
Oh
a lot of
wow.
girls, yeah, a lot of girls don't have the funds or the support to be able to make it that far, to go to castings, to build their portfolio, to work with photographers and people in the industry. So, what we do is we try to build a community within West Texas, not specifically Midland or Odessa. We have had connections with people in Lubbock, Abilene, Alpine, all of the different West Texas cities. We built a community for young women, even men, aspiring models to get their feet wet in the modeling industry, to really see if this is something that they are interested in, if they want to continue to pursue it, whether they're working with photographers or if
Hmm.
they join any of the fashion shows that we put on. We've put on 3 different fashion shows just in the last year, and they have been an absolute hit. Everybody loves them, they love being a part of it. But we try to offer experiential things for these girls and
Yeah.
for these people to learn and to grow and to not just think that it's out of reach, because it's
Hmm.
not. We're in West Texas for them.
Is it I didn't realize that you were that many hours out of the main cities. I mean, here in Sydney, obviously we're the major city, and there are places, regional centres, that are very, very far out. So I'm just trying to draw an analogy. If there was a young girl or young guy that far out and they were trying to get into modeling, I would assume that one of the challenges is knowing where to start, because you probably wouldn't want to go 5 to 8 hours. Probably, I mean, there's the gas cost, obviously, which in America is astronomical. And then if you wanted to stay overnight, there's the accommodation cost. All of that adds up, and then maybe even the photographer, just to see whether you like it or not. So is it a challenge out in West Texas to sort of know where to start, to find photographers to work with? I mean, you mentioned a fashion show, and I think you have another one coming up. Is that the case?
Yes, we do. We actually are building West Texas Fashion Week that'll happen at the
Oh,
end of
wow.
July.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
when you work with someone who's out in West Texas, and let's say they have no idea whether they really want to get into modeling or not, just their first steps, what are the steps that you guide them through in terms of like dipping their toes in the industry to see whether it's for them or not?
Um, we start off by requiring all of our students to take at least one class with us. We do host one monthly class for all of our students, and it varies depending on the interest levels. We've had several runway basic classes where people just can come and learn what it really kind of means to be on a runway, the basic walking techniques and things like that. But we definitely want our models to understand that this is a commitment. And
Mm,
so whenever we do host casting calls, or we do put them in connections with photographers, we really try to make sure that these are people who are really interested and really trying to give it a go. We don't want them to kind of fall short in that area.
yeah.
And so whenever we do connect people, we try to find what their strengths are, and if somebody is a little bit better at runway, then we try to place them in more of our fashion shows. We try to get them assimilated to that kind of work. Whereas if they're a little bit more on the editorial photography side, we try to match them up with photographers to start building their portfolio, to get those kind of images into their background, so that when they do
Mm.
decide to go and meet with agencies, they have that in their back pocket.
Is getting signed up by an agency sort of the ultimate goal? Because I've seen on a lot of pageant girls' Instagram bios, for example, when they are signed up with an agency, it's pretty prominently placed in their bios. So is that sort of the ultimate goal, is to get signed?
Um, I would say yes. A lot of models, whenever they get signed with an agency, it's a big stepping stone in recognition, and agency saying, we think you're good enough to get you to,
Mm,
these big clients. One of my one of the bookings that my agency ended up, whenever I first signed on, they submitted me to a very big project that I would have not had the opportunity to
right.
do if I was freelance. And so, yeah, it is one of the biggest stepping stones in the modeling industry to be signed. It's one of the biggest goals.
Right. So what made you decide to start Model House in the first place? So you do social media for your day job, I guess is the way that I would put it. So I'm going to assume that you're pretty entrepreneurial, and we can certainly dig into that. You don't tend to go into social media if you want a steady 9 to 5, because it's always changing, it's always challenging,
Right.
and you don't get to tend to get much sleep. But what got you? What made you decide to start Model House?
So my sister queen, the girl that I crowned after my reign was over as Miss Permian Basin, she and I had formed a really good relationship through our pageant sisterhood. And we recognized that there was a need for pageant coaches and for people who knew the modeling industry in West
Yeah.
Texas. As title holders, unfortunately, we didn't have access to a lot of resources to get ready for the pageant. We had to kind of get that going on our own. We had to reach out to different people outside of West Texas because there's
Yeah.
really nobody. There's nobody to work with, and so we um, we decided that it's now or never. And we realized that there's a lot of young women and young men who are interested in the fashion industry. They're interested in pageantry. They just need the guidance, and we
Yeah.
decided to be that guidance for them.
Is I mean, it boggles my mind when you say that you're from Texas. I understand West Texas, but in my mind, because I'm not that familiar with it, I just hear Texas and I think it's the heartland of pageantry. So to hear that you were struggling to find coaches and things like that in Texas, that blows my mind. How can you describe sort of the West Texan area for me? Because as I said, I was in Dallas, Fort Worth, which obviously is a huge metropolis. But I'm going to assume that West Texas is somewhat different. So, what is the West Texan area like?
Well, first and foremost, the West Texas area is known for being the oil field. It is the oil
Okay,
central, largest oil and natural gas producing area in the United States. But it's very flat, very dusty, and we don't get a lot of rain.
so it's fairly hot and dry at the best of times.
Yes.
What's it what's it like to live there? Is it a small town community? Is there much to do growing up as a young person over there?
Well, since it is a very heavily oil-filled related area, it's grown over time with the booms and the busts of the oil field. But since I've lived there since I was 5 years old, so pretty
Hmm.
much my entire life, um, it has grown into a bigger city, but it still has that kind of small town home feel. I know personally, anywhere I go, whether I am out with friends or I'm out with my family, there's always going to be somebody that we know. Whether I know them, my friends know them, or my family knows them, you're always going to run into somebody that you can, stop and have a conversation with and catch up.
So, what's it like when you go to the big city? Do you like the extra buzz, or is it for you? It's just a bit overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming. I know personally, with West Texas traffic, even the Dallas traffic, Houston traffic, Austin traffic freaks me out.
Yeah.
So I try not to drive as much as I can. Usually, one time, whenever my boyfriend and we spent our first anniversary in Fort Worth, I made him drive the entire time because he's from downtown LA, and I was like,
Right. Okay.
you got this. Me, not so
Yeah.
much.
I was going to say, did you catch an Uber? But then I was in, as I told you last year, Dallas Fort Worth, and I caught an Uber. And I swear to God, I'm lucky that I made it out alive. She was on her phone. She was looking at the Uber app while she's holding. I don't know if it's legal in the States because it's definitely not legal here. But she was looking at the Uber by holding the phone in her hand, driving with one hand. At the same time, she was telling me how terrible drivers are in Dallas Fort Worth. In the meantime, I'm like, when you're holding your seat because you're afraid for your life. And I'm from Sydney. We have traffic, but she's like missing, and going the wrong way. And like, oh my God. So,
Oh,
I don't
wow.
I don't know if that's just Dallas drivers, Dallas Fort Worth drivers, but I mean from downtown LA, so I got to assume that he's used to basically sitting in his car on
Yeah.
the highway. Is that the case?
Yeah, yeah. He's very patient. He has a lot more um weaving skills, I guess.
We
I can't do that. It freaks me out. I'm like, I don't know if I should go. I don't know if I should switch lanes. I'm just going to stay right here, and
yeah.
he's good at that.
Yeah, I think from my experience, you probably have to be quite I think aggressive driver is putting it politely.
Mhm.
There are other ways I could put it, but in terms of the modeling industry, obviously you started Model House. What would be some of your biggest tips for people starting in the modeling industry? And let's focus on the women only because obviously it's pageantry. But if you have some tips for the guys watching, that's cool as well. I have noticed that a big concern. I'm not going to say recently, but more so recently is safety, particularly for the young women. We've had a couple of cases over here in Australia, and I'm sure you've had as well, where young girls will go to meet with a photographer and they go by themselves, and then you can imagine where that goes, and it doesn't end well. And then there's lawsuits and people thrown in jail. What are some of the biggest tips and pointers you would have for someone out in West Texas or anywhere who's looking to sort of start off their modeling career?
Well, my first and foremost tip would be if you're going to be working with someone, make sure you go with somebody that you know and trust. Make sure you do your research and your background info on these photographers.
Hmm.
Sometimes doing a quick Google search and seeing the reviews under their business can tell a lot. Talk with models in your area if you know somebody, or if you even just like see somebody on social media that has worked with them before. Reach
Yeah.
out, ask them how their experience was, and just say like, "Hey, I'm interested in working with this person, but I don't know, how it's going to be." That would definitely be my
Mm.
advice for trying to stay safe and trying to safeguard models from people who have bad intentions.
And from your own career experience as well, I want to ask, what's the best part about working as a model, and what's the worst part?
Um, the best part for me is seeing the work that I get to do. When I get the pictures back, or if I get the commercial back, or whatever
Yeah.
project I'm doing, the end result for me is always super fun. But the worst part, I think, is waking up super early to get things done.
Yeah.
I have a shoot coming up on Monday, and I'm gonna have to get up at 4 in order to get my hair and makeup done, drive to the shoot, and then start shooting. So it's going to be a long day.
Is it true? I'm curious to ask this because you're in Texas, where I get the feeling it's never cold. But I've asked models over here, like, is it just a thing that photographers want to do, like the bikini photo shoot at the beach in the waves, and they seem to always want to do it in winter when it's freezing? And it was explained to me actually it's because in winter the summer range is going to be coming out soon, so they need to do the summer shoot in winter. But the models always seem to complain. Like, you can actually see if you zoom in, like there's goosebumps all over them, and it just looks intensely and uncomfortable. So is that just like an Australian thing, or do photographers over in the States and Texas, do they have that similar habit of putting you in the most uncomfortable position possible, most uncomfortable pose possible, and you somehow have to make it look effortless?
Yes. So a big reason why they do that is because the lines that come out, if they shoot in the winter, then they have the content to
Yeah,
promote in the summer.
yeah,
And it blows my mind because I'm like, I would not want to sit on a beach in a bikini and freeze my little booty off while I'm
yeah,
out there trying to pose and look like a goddess.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, no, there's definitely been times that I've had to actually recently. I did a photo shoot with my boyfriend. We got asked to model for a local photographer here, and we did a couple shoot. And she asked me if I could wear like a black mini dress, and it was
Hmm.
48 degrees outside. I was shivering the whole time. My poor boyfriend, he went and bought toe warmers and hand warmers for me, and he brought a blanket. Because I'm cold
All the time.
anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
So so it was one of those things where I was just shivering the whole time. But the pictures turned out beautiful. So
Probably because if it's a couple's shoot, you're snuggling into him to try and stay warm.
yes.
What are toe warmers? I've never heard of toe warmers.
So um I the ones he got, they were almost like they look like little mittens that you just slide your toes on top of, or
Okay.
inside of. There's different ones out there, but the ones that sorry, I have a hair right there. Um, the ones that I got, they felt really weird on my feet. And I was just like, I don't know if I can keep shooting with this because I have sensory things where like if even if my sock feels weird, I'm like, nope, cut it.
Yeah,
I gotta fix this.
yeah. It sounds like a sock that's just had the toes cut off, and then you just put the. I mean, I get cold fingers and toes, so I'm curious as to this, and I'm always cold, similarly to yourself. But toe warmers is not it's
Yeah,
not something I've heard of. But it sounds like you're not going to be giving this another go. It doesn't sound like it was a smash hit.
I don't think that I will, maybe if I'm desperate enough, but
Well, why can't you just wear socks?
well, I was wearing heels and the heels had my
Oh,
toes out, so I could
oh,
take them on
okay.
and off.
All right. I see. Okay, heels. What's been the highlight of your modeling career so far, or couple top two, top three?
The highlight. So one instance, I actually ended up driving to Dallas to work with a photographer that I had followed for years.
Hmm.
He actually reached out to me, Hector's Images on Instagram.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
he reached out to me, and I felt so flattered and blessed. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I have the chance to work with this photographer who has such beautiful images, and we collaborated and we made some great images that I'm super proud of. And honestly, I still can't get over them. I'm showing
Hmm.
everybody like, look at this set that I got to do. But that's probably my highlight because it really, to me, solidified the fact that I knew what I was doing, and
Yeah.
I didn't just have to settle for West Texas,
Yeah.
the West Texas area. Like I could expand.
How long a drive was that for you?
It was 5 hours
One way.
one way, yes. And I ended up
Okay.
staying the rest of the weekend there with with actually my business partner. We stayed in Dallas for the rest of the weekend and then drove home. But oh my gosh, it was a long trip.
Yeah, 5 hours is not an insignificant amount of time. I saw on your Instagram, I think it's on your main Instagram, or could be one of the modeling ones. You have a pinned post, and you're doing an interview. I'm not sure who it's with, but it's with this guy, and you know what I'm talking about. And
Yes,
it's the is it Tyra Banks, like the
the
modeling
smize.
pose. So do you just want to run me through that again, how that works? Because I'm terrible at photos. I'm a lot better now because I know pageant girls, and they always you know what it's like. You have to have photos everywhere. You always have to be on, and then you always have your favorite side, and then your favorite pose, and I think it's hilarious. And I just
Mhm.
stand there and I say, look, if you're happy with the photo, that's all that matters. As long as my eyes are open, that's all I care about. So can you just run me through? Because I'm curious the advice, and then any other advice you have for someone such as me who's just so far from photogenic. I could do with some advice, Mackynlie.
Well, for the smize, for the Tyra Banks smize, um, she always talks about having an emotion behind your facial
Okay.
expressions. So whenever you're thinking of doing the smize, I like to tell my clients to kind of think like you're sultry and like you got it going on. You look good, you know it. And you see somebody that you like across the way, and you just kind of want to make eye contact with them, and
Uh-huh.
you just kind of, you don't really smile with your lips, you don't really smile with your eyebrows, you just kind of flirty with your eyes, and it kind of gives off a vibe, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. No, the guy that you had there, I mean, he did it, and it actually turned out pretty well. I'm just thinking that if I did that, I'd probably the police get the police called on me. I'm looking at someone a little. What? So I'm not terribly. Why is it called the smize? Is that like a combination of two words? Obviously, like smile is the first part. What's the second part? The smize?
The eyes, smize, you
Oh,
smile with your eyes.
smiling with your eyes. Okay.
Hmm.
Just from how you've been doing it, you look like you've had a lot of practice. I feel like you've
Well,
mastered this.
I've been watching America's Next Top Model reruns since I was like 8 years old. So I have definitely stood in the mirror plenty of times trying to perfect it, just in case I get called to be on America's Next Top Model, and then they're like, "Can you do this, Mize?"
What got? I mean, we'll get into pageantry in a sec, but what got you into the modeling? Did you get into modeling because of pageantry, or the other way around, or were they two completely separate journeys?
um, in a way, they're kind of separate, but
Yeah.
when first won Miss Permian Basin when I was 19, I had a local photographer in the Midland, Odessa area reach out to me, and he asked if I would model for him. And I didn't have very many followers on Instagram at the time.
Hmm.
I was posting mostly just lifestyle stuff with me and my friends, my family. But I really didn't have much of a modeling portfolio. And so whenever he reached out to me, it kind of got my gears turning, and I was like, I could do this. I could do modeling. And so whenever I first started, and I just recently posted on my modeling account a throwback of those pictures, and I look back and I'm like, wow, what was I doing? But but whenever I was doing it, I just felt so empowered, and I felt like, I was. It was something that I could truly like work on and build, and it wasn't
Mhm.
something that I was naturally good at. It was just something that I knew that I could continue to develop.
Right. How long has the journey been for you so far, the modeling career?
So far, it's been amazing. I've been modeling, like I said, since like I was 18, 19. And for the most part, it was mostly freelance. I really just worked with a lot of photographers in the West Texas area and just reaching out to them reaching out to me, saying, hey, we want to do a collaboration. We think you would be great for this shoot. And so that's really how I got my portfolio started. Um, and then whenever I got to work with Hector this last summer, um, it really made me think I should I should apply to some agencies.
Mm.
And whenever I ended up started working from home as a social media manager, I figured, well, why not start applying to agencies
Yeah.
wherever, wherever,
Yeah.
however. And since my boyfriend lives up here in Oregon, I was like, well, if I'm working from home, I can just go and visit for however long, like a couple
Yeah.
of weeks at a time. And if I'm modeling up there, then that's great. If I'm modeling in Texas, okay. And I ended up getting signed by an agency out here in Portland, and it's literally been the biggest blessing. I didn't really realize how much an agency really does
Yeah.
influence the career of a model until I started working with my agency, and they've been awesome to me.
Mm.
Even I will say that they have been so supportive because a local business in West Texas in Midland um, asked me to model with them with my boyfriend, and they had reached out to me directly. They didn't go through my agency or anything. And I asked my agency how to respond. I was like,
Mm.
how do I interact? How do I negotiate? What do I do? And they were so helpful. And they were like, we don't need a commission from this. We don't need the 20%, but we are very excited for you. Here is the information and the tips that you can negotiate your contract with.
That's I'm really glad to hear that they did that, because I think that's a big sticking point for me. And I think in terms of modeling agencies, I mean, if you find a good one, you stick with them, because there's some out there that are not, let's say, so great. But the fact that they let you do that work, sort of separate from them, is a big thing, and that they were supportive of it is another big thing. What's the name of the modeling agency?
PDX models.
PDX Models, amazing. Let's switch to social media for a second.
Okay.
Pageantry, I'm sure you know, is pretty inseparable from social media these days. You can't really be a queen if you don't have a social media account.
Yes.
Although Facebook is, I don't know, I've met a few who don't have much of a Facebook, but Instagram certainly is there. TikTok is huge. It's not going anywhere soon. Then there's Twitter, and MySpace was a thing. What is, because you work in social media, what is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to social media? I know you work with businesses, and I'm sure pageant girls as well. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Mm, that's a tough one because I have a couple.
Go through
Um,
them. Go through the top 10.
Here's my list of all of my pet peeves.
Exactly.
No. Um, no, I would definitely say from a business standpoint, businesses that don't really have a grasp on social media,
Mm,
if they just kind of throw whatever they want out there, and they don't really like try to look into it, or they don't actually give any effort into it, that's a really big pet peeve of mine because I understand um, how the credibility of having an online presence and having a
mm,
good online presence can really support your business. And when I see businesses that are just kind of like throwing stuff out there just because they
yeah.
think that they have to post on social media, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine.
I don't know who you work with, but obviously there's some people that you work with who don't have much of a grasp on social media, as you said. And there's this in business, they often say, like, if you don't know an area, if you have a weakness, you delegate and you get someone else to do it who knows their stuff. And I agree with that to a certain point. But at the same time, if you don't know anything about it and you just throw it at someone else without a care in the world, you you don't have the understanding as to how powerful it can be, and I don't think it integrates that well into your business. So has that been your experience where, yes, obviously you come in as a social media manager, you do the heavy lifting, but it's best from your point of view that you work with someone who actually is interested at least in social media and the potential that it has?
Yes, 110% yes. If we get a client that doesn't have any interest in social media and they just decide, you know what, I'm not good at it, I don't want to do it, it's your
Mm,
problem. That's kind of the vibe that we get.
yeah,
And a lot of times we rely heavily on our clients to provide the tools that we need, whether it's
of course.
videos or pictures,
Yeah,
reviews, kind of stuff like that. Um, we're finding a lot of times that staff highlights or people that actually work in the establishment, when you highlight them on social media, it really draws a lot of attention.
yeah.
And so if we have a client that is not really interested in social media and they don't really want to deal with it, it can be hard to pull those things out of them, especially staff bios or you know
Yeah.
getting them kind of involved in the creative process.
The staff highlights is an interesting one. Why do you think that that works so well? It doesn't surprise me. I'm going to assume it has something maybe to do with authenticity and actually putting a face to a brand rather than just having company, 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 black and white, boring, dry stuff. So why do you
Mhm.
think the staff highlights or the staff bios have over-indexed and done well?
From my standpoint, I definitely believe that it's relatability.
Mm,
You can relate with a human a lot better than you can with, just words on a blank
yeah,
background.
a logo.
Um, yeah, yeah. Or if you have stock photos, a lot of times people can tell that they're not like actually your business. And
Yeah.
so, whenever we use staff highlights, or even if we just take a branding photo shoot for our clients, in
Hmm.
order to incorporate their staff and say like, oh, this is Emilio and he's going to be doing a Botox injection on this client.
Yeah.
People know like, oh, that's him and he's going
Yeah.
to be doing my stuff whenever I make an appointment. They relate. It's kind of the credibility of the business itself, and recognizing that face and saying, oh, well, if I book with them, I know who I'm working with.
Have you found that sort of that the people who don't really want to dive into social media or just don't want to touch it, have you found that that's an age thing? Because I don't want to make that assumption. Is it an age thing, or is it maybe, I don't know, if you're working with West Texans and maybe it's a West Texan thing where it's a little bit less big city? What's sort of been the divide from your experience in terms of people who love to jump into social media and people who are just like, I don't want my face out there at all?
I think it's a personality type of thing.
Right.
We're getting into kind of a weird time where everybody is really starting to focus on their mental health and really
Mm,
trying to stay away from screen time,
hmm.
really trying to minimize that. And so I think that a lot of times when people are a little iffy about social media, because social media can have negative connotations,
Of course. Yeah.
I don't think that it's necessarily an age type of thing.
Yeah.
That does play a factor, unfortunately, because some ages are a little bit more apt to being on social media,
Of
especially
course.
Gen Z
Yeah.
being the technology generation. um, but I definitely think that people who are really trying to value themselves, value their time away from the screens, I think that that can play a part in their decisions to
Mm.
upkeep their social media for their business.
Has that been an issue for yourself at all? Balancing, obviously, you've got your personal page, you have your modeling career, you have Model House, and then you work in social media. So does it ever begin to feel like a bit of a grind versus, feeling like a chance to express creativity? It's a bit like Oh, got to open Instagram again. I've lost my login again. Oh, TikTok, 5 logins, Facebook, 10 pages. Where does it sit for you on a daily basis?
So this past winter, I actually ended up getting a new phone. And whenever I went into the Apple store, they were like, "Hey, do you want to trade in your phones?" And I decided, no, I don't want to do that because I'm using my old phone as
Mm.
a kind of a work phone.
Yep.
Basically, I keep all of my clients' accounts and information on that phone. That way, whenever I have stuff going on in my own personal life, if I want to take the weekend away from whatever it
Mm.
is,
Yep.
I can do that. I don't have to pick up that phone. I can leave it at home. I don't have to worry about it. And that's really one of the biggest things that I've found has helped me,
Yeah.
especially when I'm going to bed. I do kind of keep my phone on the do not disturb sleep timer. It starts
Yeah.
at 10 o'clock because that's my wind down time. My boyfriend likes to call me a grandma because I start getting ready for bed at like 9:30. Um, but
That's
I,
not that
I
bad.
I know, that's what I say. But no, I really try to, at night, I try to limit my screen time because a lot of people do try to wind down using TikTok or Instagram or scrolling through whatever social media.
Yeah.
And whenever you do that as your job and running your own business and running your own personal, it can get overwhelming. And I like to say that I get burnt out of it sometimes.
Mhm.
And especially, I would say this past couple of weeks, we've been super busy, especially trying to plan West Texas Fashion Week for Model Haus.
Mhm.
So I have been really trying to take that time off to, kind of disconnect. So,
That's a really good tip, having separate phones. I might have to copy you on that one because I find it very difficult to have that degree of separation and just go,
mhm.
now it's me time and I don't have to get the notifications from work where it's almost they always seem to make it like it's life threatening, the huge issue they have, but it's just social media. So
Right.
normally it's not life threatening. When it comes to clients, so from a business perspective, at least on social media, because I'm fascinated by business and entrepreneurship in general. When you take on a prospective client, what's the sort of process that you go through in order to go, okay, are we a good match? And then exactly what services are you going to provide for them? Do you keep it like fairly informal and just get started, or do you like to lay out like a really comprehensive path as to here's what we're going to do, the metrics we're going to hit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Are you talking for social media?
Yeah, for social media.
Yeah. So, with my company, what we do, I'm not the owner of my social media company.
Hmm.
That's my boss, and she's amazing. But we actually go through kind of a consultation strategy type of call, and we try to talk to clients, one on one before we start anything for them.
Yeah,
Um, and this is mostly just because we want to make sure that they have the same type of personality as we do.
yeah.
We don't take on any clients that sell products. Unfortunately, we do mostly service based, and that can come out whenever we're having a consultation. They'd be like, "Oh, well, we sell soap bars," and we're like, "Oh, we don't do that. Let's pass you on to somebody and refer you somewhere else because that's just not
Right.
us." And so we definitely try to make sure that we're a good match. Once we do that, we actually step into kind of the strategy phase where we start planning. Well, what do you want your social media to look like? What are the
Yeah.
values and the goals of your business? What kind of clients do you want to attract? What kind of clients do you have right now? And we really kind of go through that list and really build up kind of a good plan to and a good
Mm.
foundation understanding who this business is, what they want, and then moving forward. And then we go into the content phase where we create copy, graphics, and then we make sure that they are approving them and making sure that they're on board with what we're doing. If there's a graphic that has the wrong information or it has the wrong wording, we want to make sure that we're getting the expertise of
Mm.
these businesses because I'm not an expert at doing aesthetics with Botox and lip fillers and stuff. So if I get the medical terminology wrong, I want to make
Yeah,
sure that they're
of
capturing
course.
that.
Yeah.
And so, and then, it just kind of moves on from there. And then we end up having great relationships with our clients throughout the time that we run their social media.
What advice would you let's play a hypothetical. Let's say a pageant queen wants to take you on as a social media, I don't mentor, not necessarily to do it for them, but it comes to you for advice because you work in the industry. What advice would you have to a pageant contestant who wants to leverage social media to the best of their abilities? Because I see a lot of people talking about, oh, it's difficult to grow. It's a lot more difficult to grow now than it used to be, particularly on Instagram, even TikTok to a certain point. And then they tend to like get really invested for, a month or so, then they get burnt out and then they don't post for like a month. And then, how often do I post? Is it too many? Is it not enough? And then if I post and I don't get any likes, should I remove it, et cetera, et cetera? So, from your perspective, what advice could you give to pageant queens in terms of leveraging their social media, but at the same time, like you said, protecting their mental health, where they're not on all the time?
Yeah, definitely telling these girls that follower counts, like counts, views, it doesn't matter. The message that you're pushing out and the content that you're pushing out, if it's quality, it's going to be fine. You don't need 20,000 followers to be a good social media person. If you have something of value, if you have a message, or if you have information, or if you want to share, experiences, share them. If you have 150 followers, you have 150 followers that you're influencing and that you're
Mm,
speaking to, and that is a great start. If you want to grow, definitely look into the kind of the understanding how the algorithm works, but don't make it your goal to, say, well, by the end of my reign, I should have 5,000 followers, because at the end of the day, that is such an insignificant portion of who we are as pageant
yeah.
queens.
I mean, that's really good advice when you say not to focus on followers and likes and view counts and things like that. But I feel that we often get stuck looking at that, particularly in pageantry, where if you put up let's say you put up a modeling photo, swimsuit or lovely dress, and you get a certain number of likes. And then if you put up a post about your advocacy or something that's a bit more, let's say, more depth, more substance versus style, and then people will almost always see that that like count is less on those types of posts. So then there's this bit of a panic. It's like, well, do I want to grow my Instagram account, or do I want to grow my social following, or do I actually want to post something that's of substance and something more about what I stand for? So, do you have any advice in terms of how to balance that?
Um, I like to say that you can have the two different accounts. I know personally for me, with my modeling account, I get to post the things that I want to, the things that,
Yeah,
I think make me who I am as a model. On my personal account, I do kind of post a little more out of the box things. I don't actually try to stick to a plan or try to stick to
yeah,
an agenda. Um, and I find that a little bit easier, especially if you have like a personal account. And as queens, as pageant girls on social media, you can set your personal to private,
yeah,
and then you can only have the people that you want on that social media. If you want if you want to post, a bikini picture and you feel good about yourself, girl, go for it.
mm,
But that doesn't discount your message and your story. If you post, something that is a little more in depth about your platform on the next post. Um, and like I said, a lot of times whenever we're going through social media and we're scrolling, people don't actually stop to digest everything. Sometimes they just like, and they just go
yeah,
through.
yeah,
And we have to keep that in mind, as we're posting and we're interacting on social media, that it's not that deep. And if somebody likes a picture of you in a bikini, they might have just thought you look good. They might have just been like, "Oh, I like her bikini. I like her, that setting where she's at." And if they don't like the post about your platform, maybe they just don't relate. Maybe they don't have,
yeah.
an understanding of that. And maybe that's just something that they aren't interested in, and that's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't take it personally. It's something that I think social media really, really teaches you. It looks like you've got your modeling agency watching. They said, I think that's supposed to be Go Mackynlie, not Got McKinley.
Oh.
Hello, PDX models. Um, what's your favorite social platform? I'm not going to ask you least favorite because then if your clients come and ask you to work on that, be like, well, you said you hate it. Well, what's your one of choice, at least for yourself?
In terms of just for fun,
Yeah.
definitely TikTok. I love TikTok. And I post random things on TikTok, and so many people are always like, "Well, if you want to grow on TikTok, you need to have a niche." And I'm like, "Girl, I'm just trying to post something funny." Like
Yeah.
my little brother made me mad yesterday, so I want to post about it, you know? So I
Yeah.
try to keep that platform a little more fun.
Yeah, I see a lot of TikToks about how the algorithm is, and I'm not interested in the TikTok algorithm. I just want to go there to TikTok seems to know me very well. It will show me, even like it senses your moods. It seems to know what you watch, and then it gives you more of it. Like sometimes you need to laugh, and so you watch silly videos and you laugh, and then
Mhm.
it's have you ever noticed this? Like it seems to know, oh, he wants to laugh, and then it starts showing you more silly cat videos or
Yes.
more like people falling over videos, and it's really quite dangerous because then before you know it, like as you said in bed social media and then just have a look at TikToks. It's 10 p.m. and then it's like 1 in the morning and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I've spent 3 hours scrolling. I mean, I'm sure that's never happened to you, has it?
Oh no, it has. It has for sure.
PDX has now said, go McKinley, not got McKinley. We have Miss Texas. You have Miss Texas USA coming up. It's going to be your third time round, I believe.
Yes.
So how are you feeling? When is it? How are you feeling?
Um,
Obviously, a third time competing. So are the nerves,
yes.
nerves of steel or still little jitters?
I as it is my third time around, I went to Miss Texas as a 19-year-old. I started in the Miss Texas organization at 19.
Mm,
Literally just a step above the youngest age that you
yeah.
can be to enter the pageant. And I look back at myself, that many years ago. I say that many, it was only like 4 years ago. But
It seems
you
like
know,
a long time in pageantry.
it does. It it really just shows me how much I've grown as a young woman, because
Hmm.
whenever I first started, I was just entering college. I was in my sophomore year. And there was a lot for me to learn. My second time around, we had just gone through the pandemic. And there was a lot, still going on. I was, just freshly in a relationship. I was really trying to really understand who I was and figure out where I wanted to go, because I did have, college graduation coming up.
Mm,
And so the next year as a senior, which was last year, um, I had a lot of people asking me if I was going back to Miss Texas. And as much as I thought about it, and as much as I really, really, really wanted to, um, I knew that I needed to focus on myself and
yep.
focus on, graduating with, my degree, finishing strong. We had just started Model Haus. It was just freshly like
Right.
4 or 5 months old.
Yeah.
So really trying to focus on making that successful and making that solid, as well as just figuring out who I was as a person outside of college, because
Yeah.
that is a huge transition that a lot of people, I don't think, realize as they're going through college, where graduation day comes and after that you don't have any more
Now what?
assignments. Yeah, like what are
Yeah.
you going to do? So, trying to find a job and running my own business and doing all of these things, I knew that it was going to be um, a lot for me. And so that's why I took last year off. Um, but right after seeing Albany win, I immediately got FOMO. I was like, I'm missing out. I missed the stage. And so without a second thought, I signed up and I entered the pageant for this year. I think I entered in August. So
Right. Okay.
I was
A
way
long
ahead of the
time
game.
ago.
I was like, I know I want to. Um, but also whenever I do pageants, it gives me a goal. And
Yes.
whenever I wasn't doing last year's pageant, I 110% let myself go. I wasn't going to the gym as often. My interview skills were kind of lacking. I knew that I was getting kind of regressing back into my old habits of
Hmm.
not really being as personable, trying to be a little bit more to myself. And so it was really one of the things where I knew that if I wanted to
Hmm.
get back to feeling like myself, I needed to do this. I needed this for myself, not just because I'm like, oh, well, I want to win the crown, because of course I do. But I know that going through this journey, I'm going to get fit. I'm going to sharpen my interview skills that can lead to, job
Of
opportunities
course.
in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
And not only is it a platform for me to share, what I do on a regular basis with social media and with Model House, but it also allows me a chance to, feel like the empowered queen that I am.
I think it's really interesting and on point when you mentioned the fact that it gives you a goal. Because after having interviewed hundreds of pageant contestants, I'm always like, what's the biggest thing people get out of pageantry? Because as you well know, people outside of the industry don't really like, why do you keep doing this? Like, isn't this something like from 1980s, 1990s? Is it still relevant? But I think the biggest thing, one is the network of people you meet. That's definitely a huge thing. But the other thing is it really does sort of focus you and give you an endpoint and a goal where you know that you have to not just physically get in shape, obviously that's something you do, but to sort of get your life to a certain point. Like, is that how you feel? Like it gives you that not pressure in a negative way, but a positive pressure to say, look, I want to present the best version of myself on stage, and at the moment I'm not there. So it gives you that positive pressure on yourself to say, hey, I want to get myself together physically. I want to get myself together in terms of businesses and finances. Have you found that to be the case for yourself?
110%. Yes. Um, with this upcoming pageant, I don't have the financial support from my parents like I did the first go around, because I'm no longer
Mm,
under their roof.
of course.
I'm an adult, I have a full time job for myself. And so I take on a lot of that financial responsibility, along with, my sponsors, amazing sponsors. Thank you. But yes, I definitely think that aside from getting fit, it gives you a goal to be
Yeah.
better in who you are, and it really challenges you to explore yourself. And I
Mm,
say that in a way that not necessarily like figuring out who you are, eat, pray, love type of thing, but more so like understanding why you do something, how your body works, especially with fitness, because not
yeah.
everybody is the same. And you have to tailor your fitness regimen to who you are and your genetics and your lifestyle and things like that. As well as understanding like your interview questions whenever somebody's talking to you, and if you don't know why your favorite color is green, that can be a problem, especially in the interview room. And so really digging deep and trying to find those answers to those questions can take some time.
Is your favorite color green?
It is, yes.
Why?
Well, I my favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz, and I was
Okay.
always obsessed with the Emerald City, and so
Ah, right.
I've always loved the color green, especially the deep emerald green.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very particular type of green that actually looks awesome on a dress as well. Um, in terms of the exploration as to who McKinley is, what are some of the biggest things you've learnt about yourself through your pageant journey? So, if I was, for example, take the person you are now and travel back in time and show you to your 19-year-old self who was entering Miss Texas USA for the first time, barely out of like the teen division, what would the 19-year-old look at you and go, wow, you've changed so much in this, or you've grown so much in this, or I can't believe you managed to do this?
First and foremost, my interview skills, my personability, being a I don't even think that's a word. I don't know.
I get what you mean.
Personability. You get it.
Likeable or personable.
Likable.
Right. We got
Yes,
it.
being personable.
Yeah.
Being personable, being able to handle a conversation with somebody that you don't really know,
Mm,
and really trying to sell yourself. Whenever I did Miss Teen Permian Basin, when I was 18, that was the second pageant that I had entered. I came in dead last. I had the worst interview of everybody. It was literally horrifying to me. I was like, I thought I did great, but I'm the
mm.
last one. Cool. Going
Ouch.
into, yeah, going into winning Miss Permian Basin, even though I won, I scored very highly in all of the other categories. I still lacked very heavily on the interview skills. And, I've been working with Jimmy Langhoff from A Queen's Conversation very loyally. I've been working with him since my first round at Miss Texas USA, and he has been such a major help. He's helped me understand that like you can't have the most basic answers. You can't just sit here and ramble for 5-10 minutes to these judges. You have a short amount of
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and if you're going to sell yourself, you better get on it.
Just tell me what it says about you, the fact that at 18 you came dead last and you kept going. Because to me that says not everyone would do that. I know a lot of people would look at that and go, I gave my best, I came dead last, this ain't for me. You didn't do that. So what does that speak to in your personality?
I'm a very ambitious person. I'm very dedicated. Growing up, I was not a athletic child. I did softball, soccer,
Mhm.
volleyball, all of the sports, but I only lasted 2 or 3 seasons, maybe,
Yeah.
because it wasn't my thing. And then whenever I found pageantry, I also did cheerleading and I loved that as well. But when I found pageantry, this was something that was not physically challenging. It was
Mm,
mentally challenging. It
yeah.
was something that, and I'm a very stubborn person, and I know that because so many people have repeatedly told me. But I've had people tell me, "Well, you're not going to go to college on a academic scholarship." Guess what I did? I went to college on an
Good
academic
for you.
scholarship. I've had people tell me, "You're not going to win a beauty pageant. You're not beautiful enough." I won. I wasn't going to be a model. Here I am. I don't listen to people doubting me, and being ambitious and goal driven. I think is one thing that the younger me would see, that if you stick to it and you keep going and you don't listen to the negatives, it's going to happen and you're going to make your dreams come true.
The stubborn thing is an interesting one. I get the feeling you've been told that many times. Do you ever argue that you're not stubborn? Because if you do, then that proves their point, sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah. My mom, so my mom always tells me, my parents are separated, and my mom always tells me, you may have got your looks from me, but you got your stubbornness from your father. And
I
I
don't
get
know.
it because my dad is
Okay,
very stubborn.
okay. I don't know. If that's a compliment or an insult or kind of kind of both.
you
Um,
know, who knows?
just out of my curiosity, are you more an introvert or an extrovert?
I like to say that I'm an extroverted introvert. Um,
Mm,
I like to stay home and I like to be by myself, kind of doing my own things.
yeah.
But whenever I'm put in a social situation, typically I'm a little social butterfly. I'll talk to everybody. I try to get to know everyone. And I'm not really one to shy away from that.
Yeah.
But if I can, then I'll stay home.
What are your favorite things to do to switch off, or when you're at home, or in your free time, if you have any? What do you do to just switch off?
Well, I like to read quite often. I've right now I'm reading Where the Crawdads Sing, because it was such a hit over the last couple of years, and I was like, I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to read it, and then I gave in, and now I'm reading it. Such
Yeah.
a good book, love it. But I also like to cook a lot. Uh, I'm
Okay.
I'm kind of a Pinterest chef, I like to say. Um, I look up Pinterest recipes all of the time. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should try that. And I've learned how to make, stir fry from it. I make really good baked pork chops, which is kind
Ooh.
of weird, but they're really good. So yeah, those are kind of my go-to things to kind of relax and chill out.
It wouldn't be a pageant interview if we didn't talk about food. I mean, what? So the baked pork chops sound like they're the highlight. So what's been your best dish? Is it the baked pork chops? And then what's been your biggest culinary disaster? Have you poisoned anyone, for example?
No, I haven't poisoned anybody, but there was one time last summer or the summer before. Um, my boyfriend came to visit me and I was making, actually, I think I was making pork chops and I also was making roasted potatoes and I ended up adding way too much salt. I accidentally, instead of the little sprinkle side, I opened to like the spoonful side and I like dumped an entire spoonful of salt. And my poor boyfriend, I love him to death. He ate them. And I told him he didn't have to because I knew that I had messed them up.
Did he know they were too salty, or did he actually like it? Some people love salt. I don't know.
No, he was like, no, they're so good. It was bad. It was so bad.
Did you eat them?
No, I didn't.
You didn't even eat it.
No. Well, I was also preparing for Miss Texas 2022 and
You don't
I
want
was
too much
really
salt.
trying yeah, I was
Yeah.
really trying to watch it and then he ate it and I felt so bad. But no, my favorite dish, I'm really, really good at pork chops, but my favorite dish is, and I've only ever made it once, but it was
Mhm.
so good. It was like a baked ziti pasta, and we used ground turkey for it, and it was so good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That that sounds interesting. I heard. I know Gordon Ramsay says if you want to know how good a chef you are. No, it wasn't Gordon Ramsay. It was another some very famous chef, and he said he'd get prospective chefs to do an omelet because it's such a plain basic skill that if you to do it to be a really good chef, you have to do it just perfectly, where it's slightly underdone in the middle and warm and runny. Have you ever done an omelet?
No, I'm not a fan of omelets personally, so I don't cook them ever.
Okay. Well, there you go. Baked pork chops, it is, preferably not with spoonfuls of salt.
Yeah.
Um, you got a keeper there. You do realize if you screwed up a dish and you didn't even eat it and he ate it, you might want to hold on to that one.
Yeah.
That doesn't that's true love when they will eat your crappy food and say, yeah, it's so good, and it's so bad
Yes.
even you won't eat it. Um,
Mhm.
just before we move towards the final 10, McKinley, is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to for supporting you along your
Uh
journey?
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out to a couple of my sponsors for supporting me in this journey. Shout out to Doll Aesthetics in Midland. Have done my Dysport, my lip fillers. I'm very open about that kind of stuff. So I love talking about it. Love my sponsors; they're great. And thank you to my parents for supporting me throughout this journey. Love you guys. Shout out to PDX Models for believing in me and for getting me started on this awesome modeling journey, and also for supporting me through Miss Texas.
Don't forget your boyfriend.
Oh yeah, shout out to my boyfriend. No, Nathan, I love you.
For putting up with the yeah, sounds like a good bloke. All right. Let's go through these final 10 random questions. Number 1 is what is your favorite word?
Hmm, prerogative. I use prerogative a lot in a lot of my sentences.
That's a good word. I've not had that as an answer before. It's also a slightly tricky one to spell, but that's a good one. Number 2, what is your least favorite word?
Fine. I hate when people are always like, "I'm fine. You're fine." It's such a bland word.
There's I've done some work in relationship counseling, and one of the big warning signs is when the guy asks the girl what's wrong, and she says, "I'm fine," and with that intent, like, "I'm fine, like nothing is wrong. I'm Fine. After the interview, I'll tell you what I was told fine actually stands for.
Okay.
Number 3, I can't repeat it on it. Number 3, what in life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
When there's a goal, when there's something that I have to accomplish, when there is a finish line.
What turns you off?
I don't know. When there's not enough enthusiasm in something, when people are not excited to do something, or they're really kind of reserved about stuff.
What sound or noise do you love?
So I fall asleep sometimes to the sound of airplane noise in my headphones. I travel a lot, and so the airplane white noise is a really good one for me.
Can I just say, I literally 2 days ago got a white noise machine, and it has 20 noises. And the one that I picked, it wasn't rain, it wasn't any of that stuff. It was the sound that sounds like an airplane. I don't know why, because it just reminds me of when you're on a plane, you can't do anything, so you can switch off. And I've had like
Yeah.
the 2 best nights sleep that I've ever had because of the airplane noise. So it's really weird you mentioned that.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I get really irritated when people start talking extremely loudly in like public places, and it's really hard to focus on what you're doing or like what you're talking about, and they're just being really disruptive. That's top number 1.
If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
To freeze time. And this is because whenever I was younger, I used to watch the show Charmed, and my
Mhm.
favorite character, Piper, she could freeze time. And that's my favorite thing that I've ever seen a witch or like a supernatural being be able to do. And so that would definitely be my superpower.
What job or occupation other than your own would you most like to attempt?
I want to be the marketing director for the Dallas Cowboys.
That's a not insignificant goal. That would be a good one to go for. What about what job would you definitely not like to attempt?
Mm. I would not want to be the person who cleans stalls at like the horse rodeos and things like that. I have done that before. It's not my deal.
Sounds like you got to put a peg on your nose kind of deal.
Yeah.
Uh, Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I think I would like to hear him just say welcome home.
Sounds good. Well, Mackynlie, that's about it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. I will keep you on the line for just a second whilst I hang up with the audience. But thanks to everyone for watching, and we will
Thanks,
speak to you
guys.
next time. Bye for now. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Sorority Access is now open. So if you'd like to join an amazing group of women and learn how to be the most powerful, confident, and impactful queen possible, head to thepageantsorority.com. I'll see you there and see you in the next video.